Welcome back, builders. I'm excited. This week we are going to be taking a look at Fomoria, the Cursed Ones. This is a really cool early age Celtic mythology nation, and they have some pretty distinct strengths, but they also have some pretty distinct weaknesses. And while I do think that overall they are very strong, yeah, those weaknesses definitely hold them back from being oppressive, I would say. We're going to take a look at that. Let's start by just looking at the lore overview. The bountiful land of Fomoria was claimed by giants who once guarded the dark and stormy ocean realm of the drowned dead. With death ever near, their loyalties had changed and their malice grown. With the ascendancy of the previous Pantocrator, they were punished for their sins and banished from their dark home. The full effects of the curse became evident when the Fomorians settled in a fertile land. Their offspring were short and cursed with monstrous appearance. The few surviving Fomorian giants saw their once proud race degenerate and die. Then came the invasions. Partholonians, Numidians, Furbolg, Tuatha all claimed the land of Fomoria. Twice the Fomorians were all but defeated by foreign magic, but twice they conjured a plague that slew the invaders. The third wave of invaders, the Furbolg, accepted Fomorian rule and aided the giants in defeating the Tuatha. Now, Furbolg composed much of the Fomorian population, and Fomorians are skilled shipwrights, powerful stormcrafters, and have a legacy of mastery over the dead. These guys have had a bad run of things. After they got kicked out from their watery duties, they were cursed. And so the original race were these guys. Size 9 giants. Cyclopean, I believe they only have one eye. Pretty strong, pretty magically gifted. But with the curse, they were turned into these guys, these goat-headed guys. While generally speaking, their stats look okay. They're not great for a giant. This is kind of the bog standard, I would say, of their troops. You'd look at this and say, okay, good strength, average, slightly above average, good hit points. But the problem is the curse gives them, deformities and diseases. And so your units will spawn in crippled, or they'll have a limp, and the cheaper units have that problem more than the more expensive. With your sacred unit here, one of a couple sacred units actually, these guys are called the Unmarked, and their main feature is they don't come in having afflictions. Otherwise, a relatively unremarkable sacred giant. For size 6, so you can't fit 2 per square. 1 good hitting attack, but you only have 12 attack skill, 14 defense. You're the only guy that's going to be in the square unless you fill in with smaller people. Not particularly impressive. As the story told us, they have a couple different groups. We have the Fomorian giants, and they're pretty rare. This is our other sacred from them, by the way. Again, same problems as the other guys, but basically just bigger problems. They take 2 holy points to recruit. They're size 9s. You can't put anything else basically in the square, other than maybe some bugs or something you summon. Good strength, but entirely mediocre. 11 attack, that's going to be really rough. And a very low accuracy javelin. In addition to the giants, we have the Fomorians who are cursed. So we have these goat-headed units. We have the Furbolgs, better than human stats, so slightly above human HP. Okay attack, good defense. These guys are pretty decent. Carrying on with our theme from these guys do not wear helmets. I do feel like it's less of an issue for these guys because they're cheaper units and you have more of them. Whereas for you only had 2 guys per square, so you were already going to be undermanned. At least here we have a lot of guys. We also have Numidians. So we have these Numidians, which are kind of the equivalent of elves in our roster. And we have a good leader out of them and some really good troops. However, and this leads into part of our weakness, we have really nice mages and leaders, but they're cap only. That really is going to hold us back. We also have the Numidian sources. We'll take a look at her here in a minute. So those are the 3 main groups of people who are here. Let's go through the national features before we really dive into the units. So we have the malformed Fomorian Giants, the big guys. We have the Furbog, most common, and the Remnant Numidians, which are just those elfish type units. We have Sailing on this guy, so right here. So, and it's good sailing, max size 10, so any unit essentially. And we can take as many as we can lead. So great sailing there. He also has Gift of Water Breathing, so you can take troops underwater very easily. We are not an iron using faction, so we don't have to worry about rust or anything from that. Our actual Fomorian giants are amphibians, so they fight fine. Our other units, however, are not amphibians, so they will have that underwater penalty. Our military is the Furbog infantry, which we will have to recruit those outside of our capital. We can also get some of these bigger guys, but generally speaking, I do not like these units. That size 6 is really rough. It's really rough. If I had to get those guys, maybe the javelins, maybe. For our magic, we have air, and we have really good air. Like, we can random at a pretty decent chance into air 4 or death 3 pretty easily. We also have a little bit of water. We also have glamour really well on her. She gets 2, and if you get really lucky, you could get up to 4 glamour on her. Very nice. We have a little bit of death on the other mages, but he's our main death caster. We have a little bit of water sprinkled, a little bit of nature sprinkled, and we actually can random into earth. So I don't know why earth isn't listed here, but we have a tiny bit of earth. Not particularly a useful amount, unfortunately. For our priests, we have priest level 1s, except for our Fomorian King, who's a priest level 2, so we do not have recruits holy 3s, and boy, I feel that after playing with their now they were cap only, but still you could get as many as you needed, and it's hard to bless large sacred troops, so if you're trying to use these, they're very hard to get your bless on. You have to really script some and make sure you have people in the right place when you're setting up your battles. We use giant forts, so those are the more expensive but better forts. I like those. I don't think they're a problem. They are a bit more expensive, but with infrastructure already being more expensive, it's less painful, I think, than it used to be, and they are better forts. Okay, let's dive into actual units here. We have 2 different scouts. We have the Furbog level scout. We have the Fomorian scout. I don't know why you'd want this guy particularly. He's almost double the price. I guess if you're worried about random ritual spells hitting a gym carrier, he does have 33 HP, so that's something he does. We have our general recruit anywhere leader. Unfortunately, cannot do formations, so He does have pretty decent stats, so I have had these guys, a few things trickle through my front line, and he's killed a few and not died with his 16 defense skill, so that's something. He does have some javelins, so he can throw a couple things while he's staying behind troops. They're not the worst thing in the world, but they're not great. We have the Fomorian champion, so this is our non-sacred leader type. Unfortunately, they do not have formations, so pretty I don't get these guys. We have the unmarked champion. This is what I would recruit for generic leadership outside of my capital. They have formations. They are a priest level 1, so they can help with your blessings. They are also sacred, so they get to use your bless. These guys are okay. They are size 6, unfortunately, so not the best thing ever. We have the Furbog Druid, who is our economy researcher. They start with Air 1, and then they random into Water, Earth, Nature, Glamour, so decent paths there. Not particularly noteworthy for being combat casters, but they're going to be your main researcher, probably. You are paying 76 gold a year for them as maintenance cost, because they are not sacred, so you don't get that half reduction. They'd be very efficient if these were sacred, but they're okay. On Fomoria, you do want a lot of magic research, so you're probably going to want to take some magic scales. So adding in the random path plus some magic scales, you're looking at 10, 11, 12 each. We have air access, so we can also do alquils very easily. We have some nature access, so we could do homunculuses. We have death access, so we could go with the death research items. So lots of options to boost that research up. And they're pretty cheap. They're only 95 gold, so very cheap to recruit at least, so not too much up front. We also have the Fomorian Druid as our other Recruit Anywhere caster. These guys are the bomb. They're so good. So they are sacred, they are a priest, so they can use your bless. They all come with air too. They random into water, death, nature, glamour. So decent paths, although I would say for me, my favorites are really the nature because you can do bark skin and eagle eyes very easily, making this because normally they're not super accurate, but with eagle eyes, that's perfectly fine. These guys are going to be wanting to cast air spells, and you're going to want some air spells. These guys could be light thugs. They're not bad. 32 HP. They are sacred, so they can grab whatever blessing you're using. Air is not a bad thug pass. You can Cloud Trapeze, you can Personal Mist Form. Good spells there, do the lightning stuff. Great, great unit. And generally speaking, if I have the money, I want these guys over the Furbolg Druids because they are combat capable. I really like these guys also to add just a little magic punch to an early army. Like, even if I just have Lightning Bolt, sending one or two of these guys out really can up the killy power of your expansion parties. So if you're rolling in money, that is an option, and I quite like that. It's fun just to get some early magic out too, something you don't generally do in expansion for a lot of nations. Lightning Bolt is Evo 2, I believe, so you can get that super, super early. Next up, we have the Numidian Champion. Now, this starts our capital-only units, and it's a shame these are capital only. Even if just him was not, these guys Fomoria would be so much more powerful. So, death and glamour, no randoms. He is a priest and he's sacred. He comes in with stealth, he comes in with glamour, he's a spell singer. So, skeletal body, you could do a little skelly spamming. I prefer to use the glamour for the illusionary warriors. Good spells on there. He comes in with good equipment. He's got a golden sword, which has great attack and does magic damage at 20. You can see he's got high stats. Like he has got Numidian stats, that is for sure. 18 defense just out of the box, 16 attack, 17 with that sword. His protection's just 10, but that's fine. I mean, he's got a big, heavy round shield. Very nice. Plus, he has the glamour if he gets into melee. Spell Singer, you cast slower, but you take less fatigue. So, if you have him sit behind and do spells, he'll be able to get a lot more of whatever you're spamming out onto the field. And when you're spamming things like skeletons or illusionary warriors, the speed that you're pumping those out once the initial burst gets through doesn't really matter, and I'd prefer the staying power to be able to just fill in more behind my lines rather than quickly get out a few things. Do note that when you're doing your scripting, keep in mind units that have Spell Singer are slower. So if you're timing something, say with Storm or with another spell that for whatever reason you need something else to go off first, note if you have Spell Singers and non-Spell Singers together, the time things are going to go off will be different. So overall, it also has 100% leadership, so it has formations. Very, very good unit. Unfortunately, he competes with your two best mages. So we have the Numidian Sorceress, Air, 2 Death, 2 Glamour, randoms into the same plus water or death or nature. Great paths. Not as good at the air magic, so generally speaking, I try not to get them into just spamming Lightning Bolts or Thunderstrike, because I'd prefer my much cheaper mages are doing that. So I try to focus her more on her other paths once we get to combat. She comes in with the glamour, she has the spell slinger, not a very good leader, although she can lead quite a few undead, which can be quite useful for us. Not too expensive, 370 is a bit pricey, but this is a combat mage and like she's good to go, so that's not terrible. Not slow to recruit either, so very nice. Having the glamour is just a good baseline thing to have. Great defense skill also. This is just unbuffed. Not something I would want to thug or anything. She's only got like slightly better than human HP, but a good caster for sure. And this is what you're going to probably do most of your recruiting if you can afford it out of your capital once you get going, because you can do your death glamour type stuff with them. Finally, we have the Fomorian King. We talked about him briefly. He is amphibious, he has water breathing, he has sailing, he has dark vision, he has some shock resistance. He's our priest too. He's our highest air mage. He's got a lot of stuff going on for him, but he's very expensive. 675 gold is a very pricey chassis, and he's slow to recruit. And it's a double whammy because if you're recruiting him, you could have two sorceresses. So you're going to need some of these guys. If you want to try to get underwater, it's quite nice to be able to get a strong chassis underwater, and his magic will definitely give him the advantage in that. He also is your best priest level, and having that can be useful depending on if you need those holy spells. They also can random into, I mean, I guess in theory they could go up to Air 5, but realistically Air 4. So a Stormcaster right out of the box. You could have one guy with some boosters made to cast your big ritual spells. This is a nation that I think would benefit from, say, Perpetual Storms. So that is a ritual that makes every fight takes place in a storm. I don't know if that includes underground. I will need to test that now that I think about it. But generally speaking, Storm starts every combat, so you don't have to cast it. You can immediately Storm Power and start spamming out Thunderbolts or Lightning Bolts. So great, great ritual there. It does hit everyone with some other penalties, but I think your benefit out of that is way, way higher. So for mages, we can cast Storm very easy. We could do Wrathful Skies very easy. We can do the big glamour stuff, so we could go Twilight, we could go Darkness, we could go Nightfall. We do have some troops that have Dark Vision or Spirit Sight, so we can take advantage of that. We have some summons that have Dark Power, so we can take advantage of that. So overall, these guys really, really good for battlefield magic. Oh, we also can do Wailing Winds, and we can do False Horrors. Another really good battlefield combo. I actually have not hit that in my test games now that I think about it. I've mainly been focusing on timing when you want to get Storm. But yeah, that gives you just another avenue. So you're not entirely a one-trick pony. So if your lightning is just totally countered by something, you can switch gears and you could go with fear and try to do the morale type game, or you could go death spamming and you could just try to do skelly spamming, or you can switch over into thugs. This guy's a decent thug chassis. This is like heavy, heavy thug up into maybe even super combatant. If you have a Death 3 guy, he could do Soul Vortex. He could be a very, very strong combatant. White good. Now, you don't have the earth of like a Dione, but you can, because you'll have really high death in that case, you could do invulnerability. So that gives you, I believe, 29 protection against mundane hits to your body, and while you only wear a crown, you're size 9, so human-sized troops can't reach you to hit you in the head. You also have air magic, so you can arrow fend or something to protect yourself from arrow fire, so your head's not nearly as vulnerable as it is on smaller troops. Very strong here. Troop-wise, you have some militia. I would never get these guys particularly. Bad protection, bad morale. You have some slingers. I'm not in love with slingers, but in the early era, there's a lot of other people who haven't figured out hats yet. They're okay. What I do like to do with these guys, if I do recruit them, is put them out front on fire and keep distance, just to pepper things as they're coming towards you. They have decent combat speed. They have good precision. Like, that's 12 precision is pretty good. So as far as slingers go, they're some of the better ones. If they had like a shield, they'd be really good for winning archer duels, but unfortunately they don't. And a hat, I suppose. Then we have two varieties of what will be our main line troops outside of the capital. We have the Furbog Warrior with an axe, and then we have a spear javelin. So the axe guy has a 12 attack with 18 damage on a chassis with 14 defense and 7 protection. These guys are all right. They're all right. This is just a good frontline set here. If you can buff their protection somehow, this is pretty dang solid. Protection buffing is not going to be our forte, though. The highest nature we get is 1, so we'd have to find a way to make thistle maces to do the nature buffing. Our highest earth is 1, so we would need to either empower or find a way to make earth boots and then Earth Power to get those out. Those could be very strong, though. Very strong support for these guys. Giant Strength would also not hurt. They would appreciate that. Generally speaking, though, I actually like these guys a lot more. Length 3, Bronze Spear. They have 2 Javelins. Note they have decent precision. And they have 11 Strength. So range 11 Javelin with pretty good precision. I like javelins, so this is a good javelin chassis. Again, 7 protection, 15 defense, but no, you're not paying that much. I mean, 13 gold, 10 resources, 15 recruitment. They don't have a hat, so that is a downside, but overall, I would say these guys are pretty good. They're fine for early age. Then we have our Cursed Fomorians. Militia, I would never get these guys. They're just not worth it. Javelins, if I had to recruit these guys, this is probably the better of them. You get 2 javelins that are very inaccurate, but you have a big range on them, and if they hit, they will pin somebody to the ground. Unfortunately, they don't have shields, though, so you are going to throw those 2 javelins, then run up and get stabbed to death pretty quickly with your 11 protection, 9 defense. Then you have the Spearman, who is just slightly better than that. And the Fomorian Warrior, these guys are okay. They do finally have a hat, so somebody has figured that out. These are the big brain boys. And a good hat, too. So 16 protection, 13 defense. Now, note the defense does take into account that we have the shield. They're okay. You could have them plus a Furbog in a square, so you're not by yourself at least. They're okay. Nothing to write home about, though, I would say. Then we have our cap-only stuff. We have our Numidian Warriors, and I really like these guys. They expand very well. Barring, like, elephants or something really crazy, like a bunch of Bone Tribe or something, you have a lot of fights that, unless you get completely surrounded, you'll barely take losses, if at all. They have the Glamour. They're stealthy, so you can sneak past hard things, or you can surprise somebody. There's not a ton of iron in the early age, so your iron vulnerability is kind of whatever, and they have to hit you for that to matter. We have a magic weapon, so we can deal with things that are ethereal, we can deal with things that have invulnerability. That's a great thing to have on units that you don't have to worry about paying for your bless. They have javelins at good precision. They're wearing a bronze scale cuirass, a bronze cap, and they've got the golden shield, just like the commander. Very good units. Their protection's a smidgen low, I would say, for what you're paying, but they have high defense, high attack, high precision. The magic weapon, they're not super duper expensive. Like, this is not a cheap troop, but you're paying for an elite troop and you're getting one. I don't feel that this is bad at all. Quite good. These guys are also, they're related to the Saromatian Partholonians, so that relates to Saromatia. The Partholonians basically got pushed out by the Saromatian Witch Kings, so that's kind of an interesting connection that they have. Then we have our 2 Sacreds. Our unmarked is unremarkable, unfortunately. So they're sacred. They do not get afflictions on recruit, so that is kind of notable. So if you want these type of troops, these are probably the ones to get. I'm struggling with the blesses for them, though. I'm not in love with the repel blesses because you can only have 1 per square, so you're still going to get just pummeled by things. They do have decent HP, so I've generally been going with region blesses, but I've been entirely unimpressed by these guys. When we get to Pretenders, we'll look at some possibilities for blessings, and maybe there's a big brain move that I just haven't figured out, but I have not been impressed with them on any of my testing. Ditto with the Fomorian Giants. These guys do have the benefit of being amphibious, though. And so what I like to do is I'll have one of our Fomorian Kings lead a few of these guys, and then whatever underwater / amphibious chaff I've been able to pick up. And these guys are so big that you can put the chaff in front of them. You can have them wait to, if you want to, throw their javelin, but they'll probably kill your own guys, so I generally don't. Get blessed, and then they push their way to the front of the crowd and start stabbing. And underwater, these guys are pretty decent as long as they don't get too surrounded. If you just try to expand with just these guys, even if you have a decent bless, they just get chopped down way too easily. Not super impressive. Another notable thing they can do is they're size 9, which is the same size as elephants. So if you need somebody to stand in front and try to hold off elephants for a second so you can javelin them down, these are the guys to do it. I've had mixed success with that. You need enough of these guys in line formation that the elephants hit them front on and don't wrap around behind you and just squish everyone anyways. So pretty niche use, but something of note, because elephants are the bane of your Numidian warriors, because elephants don't care if you're a stealthy, glamour, high defense unit, they just step on you. My biggest losses I've ever taken to these guys, other than like other big sacreds or something, have been elephants. So be very wary of elephants if you're expanding with Numidian parties. As for sites, we have 2. We have the cap recruit stuff. We have a water, 2 air. We also get a death and a glamour and our other cap only stuff. So pretty normal sites. We'd love more death. We'd love more air if we got the choice. We're going to be wanting to cast Storm Elemental, Storm, Mist. We have some national summons that we're going to want to cast, so we'd love more death gems if we could get a hold of them. A lot going on there. Let's take a peek. This is one of my test games. Nothing super interesting in this one, other than, as usual, Vanheim sailed me, so I sailed him back. That was kind of satisfying. This isn't been the best expansion I've ever had, but it's not been the worst. Mainly I expanded by using our Numidian warriors, and then I've sprinkled in some sacreds as my god has woken up. They've been all right. Having the sailing is really nice, especially on this donut map, because I could hit here, like this whole coast I could hit, or on this side, this whole coast I can hit. So in one of my other test games, I had a river that cut off my capital, and so I had to basically go like 4 all the way down the coast to get around this dumb river and get out to expand. So I built an early Fomorian king, and I just sailed across, and I took some really nice land, actually. And I had this little like colony over on the other side, and it was quite nice. And it gave me some other strategic options, and it let me, I was touching, I think, 2 thrones in that one. So I had more availability to hit some thrones if I needed to. It was quite nice. I liked it. It was interesting. Sailing, I think, is very powerful. If you've never played a sailing nation, it can be hard to wrap your head around. And if you don't have sailing scouts, which we don't, it can be rough because you're basically going to have to blind sail across. So it is a gamble, but I feel like you have the troops to be able to take that gamble. Your troops are strong enough that you'll probably win unless you try to hit a throne or maybe some farmland. But otherwise, I feel like you'll be okay. Let's take a look at our special spells, our national spells. So we have a couple in Thaumaturgy. At level 3, we have Gaius. Quite interesting. We can cast this pretty easily on our Numidian sorceress, and it's not super duper high. It's only level 3. And there's some other stuff here we could get and use, some buffing. Frighten can be kind of interesting for our Death 1 commanders to have something to cast, although they love throwing decay, which means be ready to dodge. At least they do have precision 12, so they have decent odds of not hitting yourself. But for this, you hit a person and you give them a really hard morale check, and if they don't make it, they start attacking their allies, and if they do make the check, they get cursed. So this is quite interesting for high-value, high-killy units. If you hit them with this, they could start killing, their own expensive units and or get cursed so they're easier for you to kill. So very interesting. I haven't really gotten super use out of it, but I could definitely see use cases for it. Let's actually go out of here and let's look at this in the Dominion's Inspector. I think that will be a more easily digestible, because we're going to want to look at the stats of these units. So hang on, and I will take you over there. So we have quite a few national spells, and they're actually pretty decent. So the one I was just looking for was Curse of Balor. So it's enchant 7. It is Glamour 3, Death 1. So not the easiest thing to cast, but we're capable of it. And it's quite interesting, actually. Range 20, so not super far. Area of effect 11 plus 1 per level. So you're going to be looking at 14 or 15 area of effect. So pretty decent size. And it causes blindness. So this would be like your front lines have solidified, and you could throw a couple of these in there, and blind units would really struggle to hit your already pretty hard to hit frontline units. So I could see that being interesting. I don't know if by the time you're at enchant 7 you care about that, because you're probably deleting units with other damage spells, but interesting nonetheless. Our other ones are all in Conjuration, and I think they're decent. So we have Black Dogs. So for 5 Death Gems, and it is a Death 2, so we can definitely cast that, although you're going to have a pretty high value caster doing it. You get 20 Black Dogs. For above ground stuff, I don't know if I care about these, but now that we have the underground layer, these aren't not bad. Dark Power 2. So underground, I believe that'd be +6. So 18 attack, 15 defense, plus the strength bonus. That is a respectable unit. Like, a few of these guys added to your army could definitely make going underground a lot less painful for you. Also underground, you're not really going to run into a lot of iron, so you don't have to worry about that. So I think these are usable. Like I said, I wouldn't get them above ground unless there was a special case going on. Although there's definitely an argument to be made that you might want to darkness the battlefield, and if you're doing that anyways, maybe these could be useful. Then we have the Bargheists. These are quite interesting. So this comes in at Conjuration 4. Now, at some point, you probably will want to go up Conjuration anyways, because you're going to need Storm Power at 2, and then if you're there anyways, maybe you want to go up and get full-size Storm Elementals, which are quite, still, even after their nerf, still pretty powerful. These guys, though, they're like better Black Dogs, but of particular note, they're sacred. So we have a summonable sacred unit. For 7 gems, we get 14 of these guys, 28 HP. Now, their stats, again, that's okay stats, but Dark Power 3. So again, if you were going underground, this would be a very beefy unit. And depending on the bless that you've taken, this could be quite the terror. I mean, the Venomous Bite is not bad. It's got decent poison damage. That is respectable. So I could definitely see getting some use out of these guys. They also have Curse Attacker. So a few of these guys added to like your anti-thugging could really help like take out those thugs, get them cursed up. So they're nice and easy to kill, or at least afflict till you can kill them. So again, very interesting unit. Then we have Morgan and Dance of the Morgans. These are incredibly powerful units. Again, we can summon them in natively, so no crazy pathing required. It's 5 gems, though, for 1. I don't know if that's worth it. They are incredible, though. 17 HP, 15 attack, 20 defense, good magic resist, great morale. They're sacred. Another sacred unit. They're undead. They're flying. They have fear. They have spirit sight. They're stealthy. They have a bunch of resist. They're wearing decent armor. Like, they have 15 protection. They wield the Spear of the Morgan, which gives them a partial life drain. So their attack is at 18 with 19 damage. And it's magic. And it's pierce damage. And it does decay. This is a very powerful unit. Is it 5 magic gems powerful, though? Because let's say, like, you want to use these, you probably want at least 5 of them if you're going to take these rolling out. So that's 25 gems. That is not cheap. We have other summons that are good that maybe we want to use. We have some expensive death casters that maybe we want a Twiceborn. So that's very expensive. There's other death magic that we would like to use that would have gems. So it's hard to justify this, but they are a very good unit. While we're here, I'll also note, you can craft Spears of the Morgan. We have a national item, and it's this weapon. Very good for thugs. Giving yourself the life drain is very powerful. So, good weapon there. We have Dance of the Morgans. This one's pretty hard to cast. So, you would have to have one of your Fomorian kings do it. And even then, you're going to be spending quite a few gems. It's 4 to cast. You're probably going to need a gem or 2 to actually pull it off. And it's 400 fatigue, so you're probably looking at needing to wear a death booster and still using 4 or 5 or 6 gems, depending, to get it off. But basically what it does is it's a battlefield enchantment, and as people get wounded and die, it summons in Morgans from the edge of the battlefield, just like Howl would do. But they're Morgans. So this is incredibly powerful. It's up at Conjuration 8, though, and you have other things that you'd like to be casting that are high. I don't know if this is actually worth it, but it's very cool. Do note that if you have a Holy 3, aka our Prophet, or maybe a Bishop Fish, like we do have a little bit of water access, maybe you could get that. They could cast, the Divine Blessing and hit some of these, although once they're off script, the chance of them doing it, I don't know. But remember, if you're in your own dominion and your god is present, everyone on the battlefield is blessed. So if your god was there, as the Morgans came in, they would have your blessing. And like we looked at, that's a nasty, nasty unit. So I could definitely see that being very viable. Is it better than your other options? I don't know. If we take off National Only here, and we just click it over to Air Magic, there's a lot of things that we would like to be casting that are kind of high level. So Perpetual Storm at Evocation 6, that is a very good one for us. It would save us having to make Staves of Storm or cast Storm at the beginning, giving us extra scripted rounds of Storm-powered casting. Wrathful Skies, we'd also like to be doing that one. 15 armor negating shock, storms double the number of lightning strikes. That's just all over the battlefield. And while I don't love our Sacreds plus some shock resist damage so that you could just battlefield, you could have an army running around doing this, could be pretty good. We also could do, what's my other big ones here? Army of Mist is another one that would be super good. This isn't a combat one, but also of note is Raven Feast. We could trade our air gems for death gems. That's very interesting. And we are a nation that would love death gems. If nothing else, we could get Morgans. So interesting to do, depending on how you're using your air gems for Owl Quills and Storm Elementals and other battlefield things, but could be pretty decent. Mass Flight is another one that could be pretty devastating. We have decent troops that would be totally fine jumping on in there. So there's a lot of big, high things. Dark Skies, another one. But these are all not Conjuration, is what I'm getting at. So going up to Conjuration 8 for Dance of the Morgans, it's cool, maybe in single player. I don't know if I'd ever do it otherwise for the coolness factor. I think you're better off going for combat stuff or other rituals. Very good there. So we can see here, just this is an easy way to look at our magic access. So death, air, and glamour is really our focus. Our other ones, we have a smidgen of, but for the most part, they're not going to be particularly useful for combat spells. Our recruit anywheres are basically the Fomorian Druid. So it's, again, going to be air. So I really feel like we're pushed towards unlocking storm power, so we can either lightning spam of whatever variety of spell. There's some of those new air spells. The AoE stun one I found is actually pretty efficient on these guys too. It really can give your front line an advantage, especially if you're doing something that actually can hit your Numidians. This can give them a second to kind of chop into whatever's going to be fighting them and turn the tides so you don't take that attrition. Quite good. Okay, let's head back into game and let's take a look at a couple pretenders I'm playing with. Okay, as you can see up here at the top, these are all my Fomoria ones. I have, and this isn't all because I've deleted some I just didn't like. I've been trying a lot of different things with them, and it mainly comes down to the blessing. So let's take a look at a few of these. One of the ways I thought you could go, because you have Sacred Giants. What do Sacred Giants need? Regeneration and a way to kill things. Well, Fire Shield would be pretty good. We don't have fire access normally, so that opens up some other things that could be useful. Maybe we could do flaming arrows on our slingers that have pretty good accuracy, and they're super cheap. That could be something. I don't know. These guys, if you're going to go with that route, you're probably going to want 6 Dominion, because you're going to want to be able to get your giants, and the big ones take 2, so this will let you get 3 giants per turn, or the smaller dudes lets you get a leader and then 5 of them per turn. So that's already kind of high. What did we take him as? We took him as dormant. We ended up with heat 2, and all we got was magic 1. So you don't have this for your initial expansion, which is okay. You can expand with the Numidian Warriors, but Numidian Warriors really need a little bit of production, and we couldn't afford it here. I guess we could trade the magic for that, and that could work, but we also really want the magic because our druids aren't terrible researchers, but they're not great either, efficiency-wise. So having a bit of magic would really help them out. The extra magic also lowers our fatigue from casting, and that is really nice if we're in some sort of defensive war in our own domain. That between that plus Spellslinger, some of our casters can basically cast Lightning Bolt forever, and that's very strong. So, I don't know. I tried this guy. Maybe my indie rolls were just bad, but it took me like 2 or 3 turns of recruiting per party to send out. And by the time I got my Sacreds, it felt really late, and I didn't feel very strong. So, wasn't super impressed with him. Then I thought, okay, well, what if we didn't take the regen? What if we went with something like this? So we're still dormant, but we took Blood Surge, so we have something we could use. So maybe we could use our Sacreds for expansion, and they'd have at least Blood Surge, and then after a year, we'd also get the Fire Shield. We went dormant. On this one, I tried to go much more production and much heavier scales. So you can see here a lot better scales, but again, this didn't seem to do overly much. By the time he came out, I didn't have that many Sacreds that were still alive because I was taking attrition during the expansion phase. So, I don't know. Wasn't super duper impressed. This is also an immobile, so we only have our profit to be able to claim thrones, or more importantly, I think, bless. It's very hard to bless giant sacred. So even once this came out, and when I had them with my profit, it was okay. My other parties really struggled to get the blessing out on all the giants. Then we looked at this guy. He's an imprisoned, so now we're really slow. Same basic idea, but better blessing. By the time he came out, the game might even be over. So, I don't know. I was not impressed with this guy at all. He could solidly break you into blood. Maybe if you're in a stalemate that late in the game, maybe that'd be something you want to do. This is good. Like, this is a good blessing. Like, thuggy things that you can do with it are very strong. But again, it's so late in the game that, he was not good. He was not good at all. Then I tried this guy, and he was better. He was on the right track. This is when I shifted gears, and I was like, okay, this isn't working. Let's go for the shock resist so we could do Wrathful Skies later in the game. So we'll have one army with a lot of Sacreds, and that could be the Wrathful Sky army that just holds things in place while Wrathful Skies kills them. And this was okay. So 6 Dominion like we've been doing. We had to go pretty high on his magic paths to be able to get regen and 3 shock resist. The 3 shock resist is important because that's 15 shock resist, which is the base damage for Wrathful Skies. So this makes sure that we'll live through the hit and we have time to regen. On our Numidian Kings, who are probably leaving that gives them 20 shock resist total, I believe. So enough that they're probably not going to take hits from that because they're so expensive you don't want to lose them. They would also be the person holding up the Wrathful Skies, so you can't have them die or leave. But this chassis is terrible. 11 protection, not on good, super combatant paths. So he basically sat and researched for me badly because he's an inept researcher. I was not impressed with him. He could come in and do some big nature spells. That would be one benefit. He's only dormant, so you will get him relatively soon. What he'd be good for is relief. I feel like relief would be something that your mages would really appreciate, just to be able to continuously sling more and more spells. Finally, the one I've been most happy with is this guy. So he's down in the like human mage Dominion 1 level. You end up with going for the same build. Him compared to the nature options, you have two different ones. Either way, I ended up with points I couldn't spend, and he's just a better chassis because he has more HP. He comes in with he can do amphibious stuff. He's poor amphibian, but at least he could go underwater and claim thrones. So you'd have him plus your profit because he's mobile. He has some extra shock resist too, so that could be handy. And he starts with air death, I believe, are his natural paths. I was able to just put a couple points into death to afford the bless because I needed more points, but they're cheaper points than going higher in air or nature. Plus 3 death lets us do the Dance of the Morgans or any other summoning we'd like to do. Scales wise, we ended up at 1 turmoil, 1 production, 1 heat, 1 magic. This was okay. Generally speaking, you're going to be production locked in your capital, and everywhere else this is about the right ratio. As long as you're getting forts that have decent population. So I didn't feel like that was a hindrance. I'm not going super hot like I normally like to do, so we're hopefully not going to get any of the heat scales that ends up killing us, and we still were able to snag at least 1 level of magic scales to help our research and our casting a little bit. So he also is a human-esque form, so he has full slots. So we could put stuff on him, and if he has to show up to some big battles and do like Dance of the Morgana, he'll be fully equipped. So I think that's pretty decent. Otherwise, though, I'm not sure I have fully thought outside the box. So I'm hoping that I'll get some feedback of some other cool blesses that maybe would make these guys work more. Other things we could do would be like a thug bless. Could be interesting. Like I feel like the regen fire shield one's already pretty good, but maybe something else. Otherwise, precision would be pretty nice because our mages would love to have just extra precision. Remember, our main battlecaster isn't. I think it was 8 or 9 precision, so extra precision would help his lightning spam. We could still get some shock resist. They would like reinvigoration. Could be something for them. Farcaster maybe, although because you're a spell slinger, the enemy army is going to be close before your evocation spells start going off, so I feel like Farcaster's not as good on them, and it's not a magic resist spell, so Arcane Finesse wouldn't do much there. We already have magic weapons available to us, so I don't think blessing our guys with magic weapons is that useful. Especially our sacred troops. I really don't feel like they take advantage of that. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think for other interesting blesses could be. I thought maybe something with Enchanted Blood. It's cheaper than regen, but still gives us a little bit of life regening, and it would stop profuse bleeding, which can be a killer for giant type units. So it could be interesting there. So overall, for our nation, we have very distinctly strong units in our Numidians, in our leadership, our recruit everywhere mage. We have decent research. We have okay to good line troops. We have some variety. Like there could be a reason that you might want these guys out. We have very strong capital troops. We have sacreds that are usable, but need a bless. These are definitely something that needs something extra to make them work really well. So share your thoughts with me here. Should I go something with like stronger scales? Like we could do a scales build and really focus in on Numidian warrior expansion, but remember they're capital only. So I don't feel like these are good enough to be scales troops. Like they're fine, but are they going to win the game for us? I don't think so. Could we go with a caster buff to help these guys be like complete bosses? A super combatant bless to make this guy really good? There's lots of options. I feel like there's a lot of room here for different styles. I haven't tried particularly an Awake Expander, but I don't feel like Fomoria particularly needs it. If I was going to go Awake Expander, I'd probably want to try to get something that could go underwater. Numidian Warriors expand so well above ground, or excuse me, above water, I'm not sold that they would need that. Also, if I didn't mention it before, they have Dark Vision 50, so I feel like going underground, especially with our Dark Power troops, very viable. So maybe something that would help us get underground? Some extra sight, maybe? I don't know. Let me know what you think on this one. Tell me if you've played them in 6, if there's any changes that I haven't realized. They feel very similar to how they were in 5. I'm not detecting major changes. Having the extra money is nice, though, because we do have expensive mages that we're going to want to be popping out. And yeah, I think this is going to be a cool one. Look forward to the stream on Friday. I will post that up soon and have that available for you. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a like, and if you've been enjoying the Dominions content, I'm hoping to earn your subscription if I haven't already. And I will see you at the stream. I'm looking forward to chatting with people and seeing what you have to say about Fomoria. Very cool. Unfortunate nation that it's on its last gasp, and we'll see if we can have them end on a high note. Thank you, and take care.